There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space, and as timeless as infinity. It is a middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is a dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone. Hey guys, Alf here, back with another Analyzing the Twilight Zone. We're on episode 7 of the first season. This episode is written by Rod Serling and directed by Jack Smite. And it aired November 13th, 1959. So the basic story of this is it's like a future in the future, and basically with bad criminals, they send them to a solitary confinement on an asteroid, basically. And the character that we're watching, his name's Corey. He's basically been left, as punishment on an asteroid for 50 years for murder. He gets visited by a spacecraft flown by a guy named Captain Allenby, and two other guys that accompany him, like crewmen. Just one of them is Ted Knight, who later on, became quite famous. Everybody, I don't know if you grew up in the 80s, you knew Ted Knight on sitcoms and stuff like that. He was a comedic actor. But yeah, these guys come visit him 4 times a year, every 3 months, to leave supplies and bring them news from Earth and stuff. The two crew guys don't really feel well. Corey's being in solitary confinement, obviously alone on this asteroid that's nothing but a desert, as kind of starting to drive him mad after these couple of months, years. It's been the 4th year, so he's at the edge of snapping. Basically, he's got a car. I guess they brought him pieces of that he put together, and he's been working on that, and that's kind of helped. And then when he sees these guys landing to bring him supplies, he's like, yeah, he gets all excited, and he has a makeshift checkerboard he made using nuts and bolts for the pieces, or maybe just nuts, actually. If I just said nuts, you would think it was pistachios or peanuts or something, but I mean nuts from nuts and bolts. So he gets really excited when people come visit. Obviously, he doesn't see anybody for 3 months, and then sees people for an hour or something, or 15 minutes, I think, was each visit. So they can't even finish a game of chess. They'll play it for a little bit, and then he keeps it the same until he comes back so they can continue it. But basically, the other two crew guys don't really care about him. They kind of mock him, and, they think he's a murderer and stuff like that. The main guy, Captain Allaby, feels bad for him, and he doesn't like the practice of, the solitary confinement on an asteroid. He thinks that's, inhumane, and he says, and he's telling him news that a lot of people are starting to think it's inhumane, and that, they might change. So, there's a possibility they'll change that rule and they could take him back. Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh my God, I hope, because I'm so lonely here, and he's like, well, we got to go. So we'll see you in 3 months. And then Allenby tells him secretly that he has brought him something, a present that might help him. And, he's like, the only present I want is a pardon. Because he's saying that, it wasn't murder. He killed that guy in self-defense, and Captain Allaby's like, yeah, I know, I reviewed your case. He agrees with him. He's saying, yeah, it was self-defense. He sympathized with him. He thinks he shouldn't be here, whatever. But, there's nothing he can do. He's just a guy bringing supplies. He can't really help him. He leaves him with this crate that he says is a surprise, a gift. He says there's instructions in it on how to use it. It's going to help you out. So Corey opens up the box and discovers that it is a robot, and it is a robot woman. Back in these days, though, they used to pronounce robot robot, so you hear that a lot in this and in other Twilight Zone episodes. It always made me laugh when I was a kid. But a stinking robot. But yeah, so he activates the girl. Well, it's not an activation thing. Once he unwraps it and air hits the robot, it comes to life. And for all practical purposes, it is a human woman. It's a robot inside, but it has feelings. It can feel things. It has artificial intelligence and all this stuff. It can feel all the emotions that people can feel. For all intents and purposes, it is a woman. But he's kind of thrown off by it, and he doesn't like it, and he starts yelling, I don't want this, you're just mocking me. Basically, the woman starts talking, says her name's Alicia, and he starts saying that she's mocking him, basically, because he's like, I've been here alone all this time, working on this car, and you're not a real woman, you're just like this car, but with legs instead of wheels, and you're mocking me, because the car doesn't mock me, because it doesn't pretend to be company, you know, and he's like, you're pretending to be company, like, but you're a machine, so it's mocking him, you know. So eventually they sit down, they talk some. He's very standoffish. He brings him a cup of water, and he's like, just put it down over there. And they get into a discussion. She starts telling him that she feels things. She can feel pain, because he's like questioning her, like, well, can you feel this? Can you do that? And, you know, she's like, yeah, I feel pain. He's like, how could you? You don't have any nerve endings, you know. And so he walks outside angry. She follows him, and he's like, you know, I think he did something to her wrist or something. She comes out holding her wrist, saying it hurts, and you know, and he's like, how could it hurt? You have no nerves or anything. You're just wires. You're a machine.
When you look at me, when you talk to me, I'm being mocked.
I'm sorry. You hurt me, Corey.
Hurt you? How can I hurt you? This isn't real flesh. There aren't any nerves under there. There aren't any muscles or tendons.
Just like this car, and he grabs her arm and throws her on the ground. And then she starts crying, you know, because you know, she feels rejected by him. And, you know, she has human emotions. So she starts crying, and that's when he feels bad for her. And he starts, you know, getting along with her, and we get skits of him playing checkers with her, you know, talking to her, teaching her things. There's a part where they're out on the rocks looking at the stars, and he's showing her all the stars, giving her the names of them and stuff. And, you know, it's supposed to be a lot of time has passed. They've spent a lot of time together. He's getting really attached to her, and they're living like, you know, close friends or husband and wife. They don't really say if they like make out or have sex or anything, but it seems like they've gotten really close. It's more likely it's like he's got a girlfriend basically, and he's living alone with his girlfriend on this asteroid. But while they're staring at the stars, they see something flying in space, and she's like, oh, what star is that? And he's like, oh, that's not a star, that's a ship. He's like, well, that could be Allenby's ship, but it's too early, you know, after 3 months haven't passed yet. There's no reason I should be here. But he's like, well, he's going to stop at a few asteroids, and then he'll come here. So, you know, the girl's like, oh, maybe we should go back to the house so we can meet him. And he's like, you know, he's talking about, well, they won't be here till the morning, you know, it takes a while. So, you know, they stay there, sit at the stars. So the next morning, these guys land, they come down, and Allenby tells them, hey, Corey, you know, like, the law's been changed. We don't do this solitary confinement anymore. We changed the rules, so now you've been pardoned. We could take you home. And he's like, oh, my God. You know, at first he doesn't believe it. He's like, what? And they're like, yeah, you can come home. Come on, let's go. He's like, we only have 20 minutes to leave because, you know, there's an asteroid belt to go through and our fuel's low. So if we don't leave in 20 minutes, we're not making it back. And then he tells them that they only have room for 15 pounds worth of stuff above Corey, right? Like Corey's weight and 15 extra pounds. And he's like, oh, that's great. I don't have anything. All I have is like a book, a pencil, and a pair of shoes. I don't even have 50 pounds. So he's like, all right, awesome. So let me just grab Alicia. Let's get out of here. And the guy's like, Alicia? You know, and the crew members didn't know that they brought him a robot. Only Allenby knew. And he forgot, you know, so he was like, Alicia. And then he was like, oh, shit, I forgot about the fucking robot. I left him, you know. And he's like, you know, we got to grab her and all this. He's like, dude, we don't have space for her. We're going to have to leave her. There's nothing we can do. And he's like, no, but she's, you know, I can't leave her here. That's murder. And they're like, she's a robot, you know. And he's like, she's not a robot. She's a woman. You know, so at this point, he was so lonely and finally had company from a robot that he had already convinced himself that it's a woman. And it's not a robot. And he's basically sold on the fact that that's his girlfriend, basically, and he can't leave her behind. So he doesn't want to leave, basically. They're telling him, we have, like, you know, now it's been, like, 5 more minutes. And he's like, yeah, we got 10 minutes to go, you know, or you'll be stuck here for a long time. And the rest of us will be stuck here, too, if we don't leave at that time. He doesn't want to accept it. He goes running in the house, yelling for her, Alicia, Alicia. He's like, I'll show you. She's a woman, you know, and he runs. And they find her out by the rocks. And she's, like, sitting on the rocks, basically. And, you know, Corey comes up to her and he's like, Alicia, show them, you know, talk to them. Show them that you're a woman, that you're not a robot. And she's like, what? You know, she's all confused. So Allenby's like, oh, man, I can't believe you're going to make me do this, but I'm going to have to. And he pulls out his gun. And, you know, Corey's like, no. And he basically shoots the robot in the face, you know, just to show him, because they don't have enough time. You don't have time to argue with him over whether it's a robot or not. So he just, you know, time to face hard reality. He shoots her in the face.
I don't have any choice, Corey. I have no choice at all.
Corey?
No! No!
And when she drops, her face comes off, and all you see is wires and stuff like that, you know, and basically showed him. And yeah, so then he basically leaves after that, and they take him. You know, like, instead of thinking that you're leaving Alicia behind, forget her, you know, he's basically telling him, you know, just remember that, keep in mind that what you're leaving behind is loneliness, not anything else, you know. I really like this episode. It's a good one. I think the idea is cool. It's like the whole solitary confinement in space, talking about how cruel that is. That's pretty cruel. So that's a good social commentary. You could talk about loneliness and what isolation is can happen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, leaving people alone somewhere for a long time will drive you crazy, and it certainly does, and make you lose track of reality. He was alone for 4 years on an asteroid, and then given this robot that looks like a woman, and he totally fell for it being a woman basically in a short time because he was so lonely. He tricked himself into thinking he had a woman there with him the whole time. Some trivia: this is the first episode that they produced after the success of the first pilot that sold the series, Where Is Everybody, which is the first episode I did. This is also one of several episodes, the first of several episodes where they filmed in Death Valley, which they were unprepared for the conditions of Death Valley, and a lot of the crew members suffered dehydration and exhaustion. The director of photography, George T. Clemens, collapsed and fell off the camera crane while they were filming. But yeah, and then the guy who plays Corey, Jack Warden, he also stars in another episode with a robot of the Twilight Zone called The Mighty Casey. We'll get to that at some point. But yeah, it's a cool episode. It's a good show of what happens when people are lonely and how people can deceive themselves and how bad we need company, that we're willing to alter our perception of reality in order to attain that. It's strange, but people need human interaction. We're those kind of creatures, and yeah, we'll trick ourselves in order to have that. It's just the way it is. I think people get catfished that easily, right? That's kind of like the same idea. Someone pretending to be someone else, and you fall for it because you want it so bad. You want somebody so that bad that you're going to do that. But all in all, there's a good episode. It's a cool idea. It's done pretty well. There's a lot, it's done by narration because most of the time he's alone. He has nobody to talk to, so it narrates. And also it's long passages of time, so they have to skip through, and they'll do that with narration and quick clips of stuff going on in between. All the actors are pretty good. It's still funny to me when they say robot. Man. But yeah, this is kind of a short one. There's not too much to go into in this. It's something they've covered before. The first episode, Where Is Everybody, does that too, right? It covers solitude and people in isolation, people without communication, no one around. And they cover it a couple times, but in different ways. But yeah, I like the idea too of them like discussing the idea of maybe solitary confinement, leaving somebody on an asteroid by themselves. I guess we don't go into space yet for that, but I mean, that could kind of go with maybe leaving somebody on a desert island by themselves and just maybe coming by maybe every 3 months to leave them supplies. It's a fucked up thing. And maybe isn't humane to do that to people regardless of what they did. Who knows? It's debatable. It's something to discuss. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I think the next episode is a super classic, Time Enough at Last, with one of my favorite actors of all time, Burgess Meredith. So we'll get on that. That's exciting. Maybe I might have a guest appearance for that as well. Well, a guest speaker, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye, guys.
You are now the proud possessor of a robot built in the form of a woman.
Who's Alicia? A robot? Corey, she's a robot.
She's a woman.
Now you're gonna have to leave that robot behind.
She's not a robot. No, you don't understand. She's not a robot. She's a woman.